Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could all councillors please turn off electronic devices to silent? Ensure they're properly signed into our system. And does anyone have a conflict of interest that they need to declare at this outset? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to, I think, a delegation. I believe I haven't got a request before the deadline, but I believe Councillor Timms has a motion for Mr. Maloney. No?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that Mr. Pat Maloney be permitted to present with regard to the Transportation Steering Committee report and the Active Transportation report.
This would be PW 64.
Yes, it would be. Thank you.
Okay, so I need a seconder for that motion. Seconded by Councillor Burrows. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Maloney, if you'd like to come forward and make a presentation. This is the PW 64 2015. Welcome, Mr. Maloney. You have 10 minutes to make a presentation. Whenever you're done your presentation, I'd ask if you remain in case some of the members have some questions for you.
Sure, I take it this is on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to say I'm not with this guy. These guys. Sorry, just, you know, basically, I wanted to talk a little bit about the movement. Basically, to start off, kind of a little bit of history on the Regional Bicycle Committee, which really is, I come here with a little bit of sadness in my heart because the Regional Bicycle Committee is now, by all means, I think is now defunct and being rolled into the Active Transportation Committee. And I thought that was that I needed to sort of just speak a little bit about it so it didn't go away and nobody recognized that was a pretty important committee that's been around for almost 20 years in the region. Committee that's done many things. The list of accomplishments are long and far. Some of the things that involvement of the committee over the 20 years were things like the bike summit in Welland. Always been an advocate for cycling. The bike-friendly communities, there's now I think 6 in the region now, and that was championed by the Regional Bicycle Committee. The bicycle map, the regional cycling routes that have taken about 10-12 years to kind of develop and integrate and provide a network of concepts that would link all the regions, all the municipalities in the region together on as far as the master plan went. A tremendous amount of policy design, a very interesting committee from that side. The map, I don't know if anybody here is not familiar with the Regional Bicycle Committee map. Where I come from, it's a de-rigger. It doesn't matter what you do, walk, cycle, or drive. It's the finest road map in Niagara. And if you don't have one, I think we're giving them away outside the front door. But everybody has to have, if you're in Niagara, you have that in your car. That's been a passionate thing for me to be involved in. I just wanted to sort of say, so it's the end of an era. You know, everything comes to an end. We're now morphing into an Active Transportation Committee. I chair the Grimsby one, so I understand what that's all about. I just wanted to make a little comment on really how the committee ended, and I thought that was a pretty sad, state of affairs. The committee basically, there was an extension of the term of reference for the committee. I don't know if it was all the committees in the region for this region for an extra year, as the region looked within their infrastructure and tried to decide how they would move forward. Unfortunately, the rules in place for that extra year were that you couldn't add any new committee members. There was a crackdown on quorum, and with nothing to do because we were going through this terms of reference has been going on for over a year now. What you end up doing is you hemorrhaging people, incredibly good people. You lose all those people, you can't vote, you can't replace them. So in the end, after a year of just twisting in the wind, you end up with amazing that we have 2 or 3 people that have kind of hung in for that time frame. I think the comment to end this part of it is basically to say, I think one of the issues is that I think we view public committees as far as the region goes as a cost. And nobody sits down and says, what does that committee do when you bring the public in and they volunteer their time and they do great work? Nobody seems to be willing to put a value on that. And I think that's one of the things as we move forward as a region, and we want to bring people into it. We want public participation in the democratic process. We need to understand that very simple thing is you put infrastructure in place to support a committee. You also have to understand that the committee is a value. And if you don't value the results and don't put a dollar amount on that, it's really easy just to say, forget it, they're just a cost, put them down here. So that's sort of the end of my kind of passionate thing. I guess I want to say that, I've been involved in public committees for over 40 years. I think the Regional Bicycle Committee in the years I've been on it, which is about 12, have accomplished more in the 12 years I've been on it than all the other committees in the 40 years that I've been involved in put together. And I've sat on some pretty serious committees. Chaired the City of Toronto Cycling Committee back in the 70s, sat on the Waterfront Committee, sat on regional committees for education, chaired nonprofit housing co-ops. So I got a broad range of things I've been involved with, but this is one committee in 12 years have accomplished more and have had more incredible people on it than all the committees I've ever been on put together. My second point, so that just is basically says farewell to the Regional Bicycle Committee, and I hope it doesn't go. I guess we should have a party at some point. I don't know if we can dig up some regional dollars for a couple beers, but it should not go in passing without somebody at least standing up and saying, a fantastic committee. And I don't know how many members here are from it originally in that, but I want to thank you for all the support and the time that was spent together. The second one I want to talk about a little bit about the morphing of the Regional Bicycle Committee into the Active Transportation Committee, and that being a subcommittee. So now what we've done is we've kind of broadened the mandate with active transportation into walking as well as cycling, and we've now pushed it down into another level. And I've been around government operations for a long, long time, and one of the concerns I have is when you push it down to another level, it pretty starts to disappear. So one of the requests I have is that one of the issues that you realize when you're now a subcommittee is that people keep track of maybe results of discussions, but nobody keeps track of the discussions. So you have no audit on. So you as a regional committee would see this was what was agreed to, but no idea how you got to there. What was the discussion, what was the for, what was the past? And what I ask is that I think I'd like to see the new Active Transportation Committee have the ability to have detailed minutes taken at the committee meetings. And the second one is really, or the third one is really just a simple thing, is that we've got now called, I think it's called the Active Transportation Subcommittee. There's 6 active transportation committees in the region. Hopefully we're going to have 12 at the end. I think I'd like to have it called the Regional Niagara Active Transportation Committee, so we differentiate the committee between this and all the other active transportation committees in the region. And that's it.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Maloney. Do I have anyone with any questions? Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat, appreciate your attendance and participation in the Bike Committee over many years. I think you were the lead in setting up the Bike Committee's booth in Toronto at the Toronto Bike Shows and bringing the regional profile and the bike map and the circle route to the attention of the cycling community of Ontario by setting up those shows in Toronto. The question is to your concern about the lack of minutes or record of the subcommittee's discussions. Are you able to point to the terms of reference where that basically says that won't be done anymore?
I don't know when the details on it, but it's certainly at the last meeting we had when we discussed it, that became part of the discussion. I don't know if it got into the minutes. Probably didn't, because we don't take minutes. So I mean, it's one of those funny things. And we all know that, that when you get pushed down a level, you lose some of the support from the region, and one of them is clerical support. And I think it's important that if you want volunteers to be involved, they have to feel that they're accomplishing things on the other side that they're being heard. And being heard for an hour a day and no documentation of those discussions, I think, is a pretty sad state of affair. So I don't know exactly where in those, to get back to your kind of ramble here a bit, but I don't know exactly where it says that, but I think I'd like to, somebody maybe make a motion that, that those clerical services be brought down into the subcommittee level. I mean, understanding what we're sitting under is a transportation steering committee, and I don't know what the mandate of that is, longer than 3 years, or is it just till we put together the regional steer, the whole overview of the transportation overview. So, you know, I think I'd just like to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of overstating my position on
Okay,
that.
well, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. So the question has been asked, and when we get to debating the motion, then I'll ask for a couple of those things to be clarified by staff. Because it was, and it is a concern of the participants on the bike committee that their input is getting pushed further and further away from council. We used to, if you look at the page 19, there's in the report, there's the reporting structure. And it used to be the bike committee would report to the Public Works Committee. The Public Works Committee would receive, discuss, accept, and then recommend to council. So now the bike committee has been put into part of what was a public health committee in terms of active transportation. So now they're a part of another committee reporting to a transportation steering committee, which is a group of city councilors and regional councilors on a common subject. That reports to Public Works, and then Public Works recommends to council. So I think your question has been asked. There's the two things you were looking for, and when we get to the motion, I'll ask for those kind of clarifications in the subcommittee's terms of reference. Thank you again, Pat, for the work, and thanks to the entire bike committee over the years. The production of the bicycle map has probably been one of the most popular production pieces for the region, from the cyclists and from the tourists.
Yeah, one of the funny things is we used to sell it. We used to ask for donations at the bike show and charge $2 for it. And we used to pay for the bike show through the maps. And I think 1 in 800 people actually refused to pay $2. So we gave them the tear off one. So there's value in something, and it also paid for the bike show. Unfortunately, the region had trouble handling the bags of toonies that we came back from the show with. So, but anyway, that's another issue. So I want to thank for listening to me, and all the best.
A few more people with questions, if
Okay.
you don't mind, Ms. Maloney. Thank you, Councillor Timms. Councillor Petrowski.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Maloney, good morning. Did you sit on the bicycle committee right up until its dissolution?
I'm still sitting on it.
Okay.
It's being, no, you're in the midst, this is the dissolution.
Correct.
This meeting here is about the dissolution. There's my,
Right.
I think my wife calls it constructive dismemberment, but she's in HR, so they toss those tones around anyway, so, sorry.
All right, so you're still on the committee then?
I'm still on the committee.
So just for the benefit of some of those, including myself, who have never participated in this committee, and that's not for not supporting you, but there's only so much time in the bandwidth of, we have lots of committees, subcommittees, task force, and everything else. What effectively, if you can just boil it down to the item that resulted in its being dismembered or dissolved? What was the crystallizing moment?
The main thing was to change the term of reference, and you know, I don't know all the things in the background because so much happens here in the public works itself and in the employees that we have, but obviously there was a mandate to, I don't know, save money, whatever it was, and also we've had this, you know, this massive transportation master plan study on it, and I think that people looked and said, well, you know, here's a great group of knowledgeable people that it would be valuable to have on that committee, and I totally agree with that. The issue is you could have made that a joint across rather than bearing it within another level of government and things like that I see. So that, I think, what it was. And, you know, sometimes, you know, committees run their route. You know, there's an end to everything. But I think that was the main reason. I don't know. Maybe one of the senior people at Public Works can give us a little overview of why that happened.
Okay. Did you support, when it came, did it come up for a vote?
It came up to many votes. We had the terms of reference for the committee has been an ongoing discussion for well over a year. The last meeting of the last committee unanimously voted to turn down the new terms of reference.
Unanimously.
And that's in the minutes. You'll find that in the minutes of the meeting. It was unanimously decided by what was left of the committee with what was, we actually had a quorum to dismantle, to say that we did not support the changing of the terms of reference for the Active Transportation Committee.
And did this, and again, because I don't know the makeup of that committee, did that include councillors as well as members from the public?
Anybody, they had the right to vote. Yes, there were some councillors.
There were some councillors?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. There should be some detail in the minutes of who voted, but yeah,
Okay,
there were.
so I, through you, Chair, I agree with you, Mr. Maloney, that you can't put a price tag on public engagement. It's tough enough. We're going to be debating a multi-$100-million budget bill this Thursday evening, and I would be surprised if we'll have 2 or 3 members in the audience, if any, who will even come and speak to it. I used to, before I was on council, came down and spoke to it, but I'd be surprised. But clearly you folks are giving up your time. I think the committee meets during the daytime, so people might have to rearrange schedules.
No, it's actually in the evenings, but
It was in the
that's fine.
evenings?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, nevertheless,
You're giving up
there's still
private time.
people, and you've obviously been engaged with a number of committees throughout your life, so I share your concern and your disappointment. How did, through you, Chair, how did the decision come, and I respect that you were unanimous against dissolving it, how did it come to be relegated down, pushed down, as you say, to subcommittee status?
Well, what happened, my understanding what happened is that that vote, because it was the last vote of the committee that was then dismantled, and we now put a call out for new members to a new committee, that they decided to basically roll that decision over to the new committee and not to record that. Well, I guess it got recorded, but it made no difference.
Okay.
Because there's a new committee, new members, and it was thought that, you know, that committee's gone. That may have been what they wanted, but I don't think it's made any difference in the decision to make it a subcommittee.
All right, thank you. And have you had, through you, Chair, have you had any discussion with your citizen peers on the existing committee before it gets dissolved today? What the interest in joining back or coming on board with the so-called Active Transportation Subcommittee?
Yeah, there are a couple. We still have, I think, 4 key members, but I think at one time we must, at the Regional Bicycle Committee, one time we had 20 members. And active members. And if you took a look at the list that was on there, there was probably a good half a dozen ex-employees of the region. You know, it was a very powerful committee, and the committee did a lot of things because we had a lot of knowledge on it. May have put a few noses out of joint at times. It was an interesting committee because I think the tough thing was that nobody could pull the wool over the eyes of the committee when you had so many people or ex-regional people on it. But a lot of stuff was done. It was all done with passion, and it was done for the health of the region. The Niagara Health Group was an integral part to the committee, and basically supporting walking, cycling, and an infrastructure, to bring people out of their cars and onto the roads was what the mandate. And people were very passionate about it. I'm pretty passionate guy, so, but there was as many passionate guys behind me as that.
Well, that's
Am I
great.
rambling? Let me know if I'm rambling.
No, I love passion, Mr. Maloney. So through you, Chair, so are you fairly confident that most people will transition over from the citizen group to this committee?
No,
or?
most of them have gone. When there was a request for new members because it is a new committee,
Right.
and there were only 4 people left from the old committee that joined it. So really it is the new committee has a broad mandate. It's an expanded mandate beyond cycling, and it needs to fill out the gaps. And we lost, just some fantastic, really dedicated, not as much as dedicated, but just incredibly knowledgeable about the region, and then you bring brand new people in and have no idea what the map is about or how the municipal governments work, or how the regional governments work. So we've lost just a lot of knowledge.
Okay,
So we're going to have to rebuild that from scratch. And I just hope that there's enough knowledge to bring in so that we can be of some value to the master plan, the development of the master plan.
Right, but from what I understand, this subcommittee now will be operating below the Transportation Committee.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the multiple subcommittees.
Correct.
So
Okay.
not just the one.
So I'm not.
And the expectation is below that to have another group of subcommittees. You know, and that becomes just from a municipal a model of government just becomes kind of crazy to think of it. So the idea is that the subcommittee would then have its subcommittees with policy, network design, and education and encouragement. And the idea was to have then people come in under that to provide knowledge. And that's an absolute insane model. And I'm sorry, Mr. Maves, if you're finding this trouble keeping awake, but that's all right. So I don't know.
Right. No.
You probably should get me off here because
No, you
before
could
I say something I'm going to be, you know, not terribly happy about.
We got rid of our integrity commissioner. You're welcome to stay.
Okay, good.
I agree with you. It's an insane model. I agree with you. Going to a multitude of subcommittees just buries the voice. It also reduces the impact of the value of the committee. You can't cut it any other way, which people aren't stupid. People understand what the value is on the committees and what the committee levels are, and they will know that their voice is being changed by being relegated. Just a last question through you, Chair, and I don't know if Councillor Tim spoke to this, but you were called or are called the Regional Niagara Bicycling Committee. You made a suggestion to at least not drop its recognition as a regional subcommittee. So at the appropriate time, unless Councillor Tim's already said that, I'll be making a motion in report PW 64 that the name be the Regional Active Transportation Subcommittee. And that's not, I'm not going to minimize everything you've said, but if that's even a small token of recognition of something you want to bring back. And I will also suggest this, Mr. Maloney, that it's never too late to come back again and say, based on the work that subcommittee is doing, that you feel that it deserves higher status. We listen to the people who come up to podiums because they don't come up very often, actually. We try to make an idea that they are. There aren't a lot of public presentations. But I would agree with you, and I'd say when you were describing all those levels and sub-levels, it almost sounds like regional government. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I wanted, was there another? Oh, no, I just want to say thank everybody and just, I mean, understand that people join committees for the reason to accomplish things. And when you bury them so deeply and people see there's no way of accomplishing things, you're not going to attract anybody.
I agree.
I'll leave it on that. Thank you very
Got
much.
one more person,
One more.
Mr. Miller, if you don't mind. Councillor Redicott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to try to stick to questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney, for coming out and sharing your passion with us and for having the support of the individuals who have participated in this bicycling committee over the years. I come from a community that has an active transportation committee, and it works very effectively. My question was, and you may have already answered it, I take it that you have had an opportunity to review the terms of reference with respect to the new committee?
Yeah.
Because it does address some of the issues that you had requested in terms of minute taking and staff participation, what have you. And I guess, aside from a question, Mr. Chair, I would just say one thing. I would hope that you and those individuals who have been so dedicated to the cycling would reconsider your involvement with respect to the new committee, because it does address, it has a larger mandate, that's quite true, but it does address also cycling, which is a very important part, as you know, of the regional transportation network. So I would hope that you would take a longer view and not be discouraged by the change that is being proposed. Thank you.
Yeah, most of those people have gone on to other committees, so you're not going to take them back, you know, because they want to accomplish things. Anyways.
Thank you very much,
Is that
Mr.
it?
Maloney. Yep. Thank you,
very
Councillor
much.
Redicott. Okay, Council, would you like to move PW 64 up ahead of PW 63? Moved by Councillor Redicott, seconded by Councillor Luciani. Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. I would propose a friendly amendment to recommendation 3 on the recommendations of the report as moved, that the words vice chair be added after the TSS chair. It was an oversight on our part. Councillor McGregor has done an able job as our vice chair, and we'd like to hopefully continue with her in that role. It was an oversight on that part.
Okay, I think I can accept that as a friendly amendment. Councillor Petrowski.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to also move that the, under recommendation 2, that the name of the Active Transportation Subcommittee be at least elevated to reflect that it is supposed to somehow emulate what the work of the Cycling Committee by putting Regional Niagara in front of it. So the Regional Niagara Active Transportation Subcommittee.
Okay.
And if this is me speaking to it, having so moved that, I'm not going to support that dissolution, and I'm going to ask for the various items to be separated, and we'll vote on them at the clerk's discretion how we can separately.
So I'm going to, unless I see any concern with that, accept the Regional Niagara Active Transportation Subcommittee as a friendly amendment. Okay, so those are the 2 friendly amendments that have been made by Councillor Quirk, Councillor Petrowski.
So, Chair, are the items intertwined that they have to be received all together? Maybe the Commissioner of Public Works can speak to that.
I don't believe, I think they can be voted on separately, can they not? Clerk? And in the meantime, while clerk's looking at that, I'll go to Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a question and concern about how the minutes are dealt with, the minutes of the Niagara Regional Active Transportation Steering Committee are dealt with. Could staff explain what the terms of reference say? And I think the question was about whether those minutes come to council and what is reported to the committee itself.
Okay.
There's a new process that we've adopted here, I think, and I'd like to be clear on what that is.
Does the clerk's office want to handle that? Mr. Palumba, who's... Mr. Palumba, you want to take the first shot at that? Or?
I'll do my best, but I might need a little bit of assistance. My understanding, well, with the new committee, the minutes from the Active Transportation Subcommittee and any other subcommittee that is struck would come to the Transportation Steering Committee, and then they would be correspondence that Public Works would see.
As well as council.
And apologize, as well as council.
Okay. And sure, addition from clerks?
So basically what Mr. Maloney is referring to is that they're not minutes, they would be meeting notes of the Active Transportation Subcommittee, meaning that they're not formal minutes clerked by the clerk's office. It doesn't give them any less weight. They'll still show as a item on the Transportation Steering Committee agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the intent of that is that the minutes didn't have to come back to the subcommittee for approval before they could go to the Transportation Committee. Because then you had that whole cycling, 6-week cycle bit. So this accomplishes that the notes or the minutes of that subcommittee go to the next level as quickly as possible. But what also comes from that is that those minutes don't even come back to the subcommittee. They need to come back to the subcommittee just so that, even if it's just for reference, for the next subcommittee meeting. I think there's an unintended consequence of this action that has showed up at other committees where, the minutes of your previous subcommittee don't even show up on your agenda because they've already gone ahead and been approved maybe by the next level or by council as a whole. But in the end, it was interpreted that they didn't need to come back to the subcommittee at all. So I think that's part of the concern that we want to make sure, and that's maybe an unintended consequence.
Councillor Timms, I'll have clerk address that directly.
Please, thank you.
So basically, the way it works right now is that the subcommittees do not approve their own minutes. By the time that they're back on a subcommittee agenda, they've already, in most cases, gone up to the standing committee and council. This would be the same thing. It's not that it has to come back to subcommittee for approval. They're only receiving those minutes for information and to correct any errors or omissions.
So it is clear then that those minutes, they are minutes and they are coming back to the subcommittee. We'll see them eventually, knowing that they've been approved, but we will see them.
The meeting notes would come back to the Active Transportation Subcommittee for information. And the other point to note is that meeting notes allow that committee a little bit more flexibility in terms of they're not held to the rigidity of a meeting like this. So for, following all those sort of procedural things. So it gives them a bit more flexibility in their dealings.
So there is some value in this term, changing it from minutes to meeting notes. But nothing is going to be lost, and the committee will see what they said last time when they meet again.
That is correct.
That's helpful. I think that reassures one of the concerns we had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to speak briefly to the motion in its entirety because there's been a lot of work that's been done on the Transportation Steering Committee minutes and the Active Transportation Steering Committee minutes. I do see this as an evolution with respect to the Cycling Committee. There are active transportation committees throughout the region, and the work that is being done and has been done by the Cycling Committee will continue in a different form with different people, but with the resources that they have been asked for. A lot of the comments and concerns that were brought forward, the reason why this did go to the Cycling Committee so many times is that staff did a really thorough job of trying to address the concerns that were raised each time. I know not all the concerns of the committee were answered, but a lot of them were addressed through the terms of reference. Ultimately, there's two things to this process. One is the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee will now be tasked with managing the Transportation Master Plan with the input from the local area municipalities, which is one of the nice things that we enjoy at the Transportation Steering Committee meetings, is that we do have that input across a broad spectrum of municipalities as well as ourselves and other stakeholders. And the other part that's integral in this is that the Active Transportation Steering Committee chair has a voice on the Transportation Steering Committee, so or the vice chair in the case where there's a duplication, as it is currently. So there actually is a larger voice through this process. It's not just a matter of forwarding minutes up the chain of command. It is actually a person at the table able to express the wishes and comments that are made by the Active Transportation Subcommittee. So I see this as an evolution and not to take away from what the Cycling Committee has done in the past, but we are now looking at cycling as part of active transportation in its entirety, complete streets, and those sort of large-scale planning issues that are already incorporated in the regional official plan. But there are other aspects of active transportation, like the summit, like the bike show, like tourism aspects that are not captured in the current cycling terms of reference. So I think it's going to be a positive step forward, as well as some of the concerns that Mr. Maloney put forward about missing quorum and not having people there. Those sort of the rigidity of that is no longer in the necessarily there with the subcommittee structure that we've proposed here. So as well as the meeting notes, as Anne-Marie pointed out. The only last comment I would make to Anne-Marie through you, Chair, is that we have to add the words "and Vice Chair" on the second part of that line as well. It should be in two places. So that item 3 says that the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee be dissolved and the current TSSC Chair and Vice Chair members be appointed as the Chair and Vice Chair and the members of the new TSC respectfully.
Thank you. Councillor Augustine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, just wanted to thank and acknowledge the members of the Bicycling Committee for their work. I think Mr. Maloney accurately identified the tremendous work that they've done for the region for the last 20 years, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. I didn't do it through questioning because it's a statement, so I wanted to express thanks to the committee members, and just the outline of the work that and the successes that they had is instrumental. I do agree with Councillor Quirk in the sense that now is the time to make the evolution, so that cycling does become part of an active transportation mandate. We've found that in Pelham, it works very, very well, where the cycling concerns are addressed at the same time as walking and other types of active nature and work. So I think it's a good evolution, I think, is what Councillor Quirk indicated. I think it's a good marriage, really, and it will bring it and ensure that there's that high-profile nature there. I guess the question I would have, Mr. Chair, for staff, I think could answer this. Mr. Maloney, I thought, made an interesting point regarding where this sits in terms of council and commitment of council. And I think the other option would be to have this Active Transportation Committee report directly to Public Works Committee. Why is that not being proposed and instead go to the Transportation Committee?
Commissioner?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm just going to start, but I'm going to defer to Mr. Palumbo just to describe to you what the strategy or the objective of this is, because we did put a lot of very careful thought into how the structure would work. And at the end of the day, it is a structure that is intended to be best suited to inform the transportation vision of Niagara. But I'm going to defer to Mr. Palumbo to expand on that.
Through you, Chair. The vision of the committee, right now we are talking about the active transportation as a subcommittee. There will be other subcommittees, potentially one for goods movement, one for other modes that will work on specific initiatives in those areas. This particular subcommittee we see is one that will be there always. It's an important part of Niagara, and it's going to continue to evolve. The other two subcommittee positions may be struck for a period of time, maybe around the master plan or around other initiatives that happen in the future, and they may complete their mandate and then be dissolved and replaced with another. But the idea is these subcommittees are where the work happens, and as Councillor Quirk highlighted, they have representation on the steering committee, and the steering committee was repackaged to look at the system. The system as we evolve for transportation, for us to be sustainable, has to be balanced. So discussions have to happen in consideration of all the other modes. So when we look at a right-of-way, and we have very limited right-of-ways in Niagara, we do have some roads with very considerable width, and we have others that are challenged. So when we look at what we have to achieve as a region for support for community health, for the economy, we have to look at all the demands in those corridors and decide what can we accomplish in each corridor by having a voice at the Transportation Steering Committee table for each of the different modes, and we can have more robust discussions, and the various modes and various committees get informed based on the position of other challenges that have to be met. So the idea is to establish a balanced discussion at the steering committee. We want to have all the different modes reflected there. So if you elevated one mode directly to Public Works, it would bypass that discussion, and you'd be making decisions around one mode without giving consideration to the impacts on others.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer. Two other kind of lines of questioning, Mr. Chair. The first is, I see this, as this is coming to Public Works, it's, I'm going to say, more on the engineering kind of side of things. What about the planning, and that's good, the policies and things like that in terms of moving the region forward. I guess I think about the complete streets, which I think is a Public Works work piece. So I'm seeing that the active transportation would be involved in that complete streets discussion and ensuring that those complete streets are not only envisioned but built. But what about the planning piece? So that if the active transportation group is working on things that will impact our official plan and need to be embedded into the official plan or other planning, how does that happen in this way?
I'll start with the Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's a timely question given the round of open houses that we had last week, where for the first time that I'm aware of anyway in this region, we're trying to coordinate all of those efforts from a land use planning perspective, from a transportation perspective. In terms of the transportation master plan, complete street philosophy or policy regime is a direct deliverable of that piece of work. But overall, the transportation master plan is being done in concert, in collaboration with the water wastewater master plan, municipal comprehensive review, Go Hub study, basically integrated completely with the land use side and the official plan side of what's happening in the region as well.
Okay,
I think
that's
Mr.
helpful.
Palumbo, would you like that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just adding to that, all these master plans that are occurring right now will basically serve and input two key studies. One will be the development charges study, and the other will be the regional official plan update. So all the works that are being done will form part of those documents. So again, trying to get this discussion through the TSC committee into the master plan, and this particular subcommittee will be a key stakeholder and a working group within the master plan on the complete streets policy. Their input and the outcome of that process will feed into our official plan.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And then the final is just about staffing. I want to understand how this committee will be staffed. We heard a little bit from the clerk's side, the minute-taking piece, and that was of concern to our presenter. What about from the public works and or planning side is necessary?
Commissioner?
Through Mr. Chair, as indicated, as outlined in the terms of reference, it will, I can't recall the exact reference, but it will have standing representation from public works, planning, and public health.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rigby? You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions. First, who made the motion initially?
Well, we just had that discussion up
Well,
here on the side.
because,
the motion's not been moved and seconded
I
yet.
found it interesting that you were ruling it friendly when no one had made the motion.
Correct.
For
No.
lack of a mover, I guess I'll make the motion of the original motion,
Councillor
and
Rigby,
I'll give
thank
you
for
some
that.
comment about whether it's friendly or not.
Seconded by Councillor Quirk.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the Transportation Strategy Committee, there is a motion or a request for a friendly amendment adding a vice chair and be appointed as the vice chair of the new committee, which I don't have any particular reason why I would object to it other than that you have new members coming in who are going to be appointed by this committee from the other communities, etc. And I question whether they shouldn't have the opportunity to decide who they want to have chair and be vice chair. So it's a matter of some discussion, I think, and perhaps if I could ask Councillor Quirk through you, why he's recommending that, and in fact, why did the staff recommend that, or why was it originally recommended in the beginning?
I'm going to refer that to the Commissioner first, and if Councillor Quirk wants to add to it, he can.
Through Mr. Chair, thank you. The intent or the idea behind this recommendation, it was always intended to be the chair and vice chair, it was an oversight, was one for continuity. As has been indicated, we're going through an evolution, but there are certainly similarities between the previous mandates and the new mandate. It's more a broadening of that mandate. So one for continuity, but it's also indicated in the report that there's the intent is to revisit that in a year. So get some traction for a year, revisit whether we want to re-elect chairs or even the membership complexion itself. We talked at considerable length about how large the committee should be and what representatives should be there. At the end of the day, we're recommending just bring it all in together, and we're going to revisit this after a year.
Thank you, and on that basis, I find this friendly.
Thank you. Anything further?
So you've done well so far.
Okay.
On item number 4, and it's just a question to staff as to why we are in fact dissolving the bicycle committee because it operates separately from what we are looking at as far as the active. And I just what's the rationale other than just to reduce the number of committees that we have?
Commissioner.
Through Mr. Chair, I certainly won't deny that there's resource implications. We want to be as effective as we can. Much of what the bike committee, almost entirely what the bike committee previously was within their mandate, is captured in the new mandate. But we really want the discussion around that table to be broader in terms of active transportation and looking out for all users. So there's a degree of redundancy, but more so we want the discussion at the table. And I would like to mention, having attended the last bike committee, Regional Niagara Bike Committee that was, there are some of the new members that are, this idea really appeals to them, being a part of a broader conversation rather than specific to cycling.
Thank you. The other item that was requested was that on item 2, that the Regional Niagara be added to the original motion. I think it's a nice gesture, certainly on behalf of the Bicycle Committee Chair that brought that forward. My question goes to members from across this region. Does that mean that it's strictly a Niagara regional government committee, or is it a region of all of Niagara, or a representation from across the whole region? I think we need to make sure that that's the message that's going out there. It's for working with all of the communities across Niagara.
Through Mr. Chair, and when I take the point in terms of messaging, but that certainly was the intent. We call it one team. That's what the intent is.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've asked the questions, and I think there was some ask for some split on this.
Yeah, we're going to get to that as soon as Councillor Marshall asks his questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate, I think, the way this is going, and if I understand it correctly, a broadened scope in terms of direction. I get all that. Is there any thought as to what we're going to lose as a result of the dissolution of the bicycling committee? They talked about very specific things like mapping and among other things, and I don't know that the new transportation would want to engage in some of those kinds of activities. Do we lose as a consequence of dissolution of the bicycling committee? Or what do we lose?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of deliverables, the work of the committee, no, that's captured in, as I said, it's captured in the new broader mandate. I'll acknowledge that we are going to lose a couple of members who've been there for some time, who have specific views in terms of what their focus ought to be, whether it be strictly cycling. Perhaps Mr. Maloney be one of those in the future, I don't know. But that said, we also have some new members that are quite enthusiastic about this broader mandate. So in terms of the work that the committee has done, and I'll go back even further than Mr. Maloney's time on the committee, because I was previous year at the region. A lot of that work back then was just establishing the policy and the philosophy to have a bike network, and that wasn't an easy hill to climb. Some of the veteran councils will remember that. We're already there. That's entrenched in everything that we do in public works and transportation. Now it's looking, I mean, aside from the map itself and very specific items, it's looking at broadening that vision and capturing active transportation for all user groups. So in terms of work program, we're not really losing anything. We had considerable discussion about that at the committee. There is the potential we're going to lose some members who believe strongly in what was the Regional Niagara Bike Committee, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a request, clerk, if we can split it into 4 votes.
Through you, Mr. I'm going to retract it because I've actually looked, with your permission, I've looked at the terms of reference, and by endorsing the Transportation Steering Committee, I'm endorsing the creation of the subcommittees. I'm not endorsing it, and I'll just suggest to streamline that. I'll ask for a recorded vote, and unless somebody wants to split it, and I'm not doing this to not suggest the importance of the Regional Niagara Active Transportation Subcommittee, but if you look at the terms of reference of the higher committee, it speaks to a subcommittee, which I'm not supporting, but I will just conclude on these remarks. I won't support this because we heard loud and clear that the group that actually created this largely by volunteer participation, unanimously said they don't want this. And we're here because of them. Staff's here because of us, as a proxy because of them. And I won't endorse that what I suggest to be the arrogance of a decision that suggests that we're not listening to the unanimous voice of the people who want to retain their structure. This is a classic example, and I'm glad the public's here, of suppression by compression, and I won't support any of those motions because they all speak to one another.
Thank you. So we're going to vote on it all together, and seeing no further questions or comments.
Recorded.
On a recorded vote.
Vote is open.
Vote is open.
You're not in. Why don't you say something?
Thank you, and that's carried. Okay, moving along, we're back.
Mr. Chair,
Councillor D'Angelo.
yeah, it's noted as a no for me, but I'm not eligible to vote on this committee, so I just like to make sure it's noted in the minutes. The public may get a different impression.
Okay.
Well, I thought you were supposed to sign in.
Yeah, I don't think you need to sign in if you're not
Okay,
a member.
all right, thank you, I unsigned myself.
So we have to go back to PW 62. I have a mover and a seconder for PW 62, moved by Councillor Quirk, second by Councillor Volpatti. Any questions or comments? Councillor Petrowski.
Chair, this looks just like a housekeeping item, and under financial, although I never automatically understand whether what it says is what it's supposed to say. Are there any dollar increases to move people into bylaw enforcement? And if we're moving them, as this says, these positions have always been in place, why are we getting a report like this for consideration? Why isn't it just consent to receive?
I don't believe there is a cost implication, but I'll let the commissioner answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no cost implication. These duties are captured in the job descriptions for these fellows. It is required by bylaw. That's why you see a report before you in order for their authority to be in effect. So there will be a corresponding bylaw that will go forward with council when these minutes go to council.
Okay, so Chair, have we been in violation of the existing bylaw by not having these officers? I guess the first question, what were they called before, and were we in violation of the bylaw?
Through Mr. Chair, we weren't in violation of any bylaw. Previous names named in the bylaw have retired from this organization. Not having these folks named specifically in the bylaw just prevented our ability to issue tickets. So we haven't been able to issue tickets until we have this rectified.
So what was the current title of these folks, and are we moving them from one job description to another?
Through Mr. Chair, I apologize, I can't say their specific names, but no, these are current positions, and these responsibilities are reflected in those position descriptions.
So what was the name of the current position is my question. If they're not bylaw enforcement officers. Like, what I'm getting at, Chair, is how are they equipped to move into bylaw enforcement? Do you need some kind of minimal training, or is this like deputizing someone in the Wild West?
Mr. Palumbo.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, the position is permit officer for two of the gentlemen, and the other one is our corridor safety manager. And what we've done this time is put 3 names forward, and that's really for coverage for vacation and that. The duties are included in their positions, and as Commissioner Tripp has explained, we've had retirements, and the people that were originally named are no longer here.
And there's no pay scale increase with this, so it's not a promotion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Consent items for information. we have a presentation on PW.
Chair, I think we're at PW 65. I'm glad you tried to bypass it, but we'll have to discuss PW 65, Port Robinson Ferry.
No. It's a consent item. 63 is first, then 66, 41, and 65 is what I have on my agenda.
Okay, so what happened to 65?
It's under consent items for information.
Mr. Chair, can we deal with that now, since there's such a large group here that are concerned about it, all those items concerning the Port Robinson Ferry?
Yeah, it does, if committee has no concerns about that, I'm fine with moving PW 65 to the floor. Then we'll go back to 63, and we have a staff presentation on PW 66.
And I think that would include, Mr. Chair, 42 and 43 just to receive.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to PW 65, 42, and 43. Any questions? Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report number 65 has been, I guess, moved in to receive for information because staff in the end have offered no recommendation on it. At the last page of it, it talks about several alternatives being reviewed. And I'd like to ask staff's intention. If it is simply to receive it as a motion to take no action, is that the intent? Okay. I see staff saying no, so.
Commissioner?
Mr. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for the reference. It was indicated actually in the first paragraph of financial, by way of the CA report, CA 18/2015, which was received by Council on Thursday last week. This item has been referred to the budget meeting this Thursday. So it's received for information, certainly as a background document with a fair bit of context to inform the discussion that has now been referred to the budget meeting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given the broad and huge range of subjects that may come up under the Budget Review Committee on Thursday night, I would like to deal with this a little more extensively today in this forum. We have a pretty good, I think, robust report was the request. So I would like to deal with it, and I did ask the clerk, or deliver to the clerk, a motion that would do more than receive at this point. And recognizing that the previous motion said that we'd only deal with it on budget night, there was a number of issues that I think need to be dealt with. So I'd like to move that this item be received and dealt with as follows. And I think Anne Marie has something she can put up on the screen for me.
Can you just, one sec, Councillor Timms, but if he moves receive for information at the start of this motion, then they're on the floor. What is he, do you want to move to receive the report for information first? Councillor, could you move? We need a mover and a seconder for PW 65, PWCC 42, and PWC 43 first, and then we'll move to so Councillor Bentley, seconded by Councillor Rigby. Okay, and now Councillor Timms has a motion regarding these. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was able to make a few copies and pass them around, but unfortunately not enough for all of council. I guess to address the major point of the subject is whether or not the federal government continues to fund the ferry, or whether the City of Thorold does or the Niagara region does. When I'm speaking to the public, to the report 65, the reference is always to the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation And I have to remind council again that they are only the property manager of these properties, and their contract as property manager expires in 2018. This contract between the Seaway Management and the City of Thorold expires in the spring of 2016. So the bottom line of it is we need to extend, in my opinion, we need to extend this contract, find a way to keep the ferry open and make it part of the region's discussion with the federal government in terms of what is included in that new agreement between the federal government and the new property management corporation. Maybe the same corporation, but there is a new terms, and we have had, by motion of this council, a couple of letters to the government regarding the 2018 deal. So what I'm asking for here is, as listed there, well, that's exactly what I said up there. The region and the staff of the City of Thorold work on a proposal with the St. Lawrence Seaway to extend the contract for another 2 years, and that the proposal consider these 5 points. I guess the key and number one point that maybe even should be separate is that this regional council requests the federal government to continue financially support the canal crossing at Port Robinson with the City of Thorold in the City of Thorold in the region of Niagara.
Councillor, so I know you want to move this motion, but before you get into discussing the motion in depth, you should move it. We should have a seconder so that it is now on the floor. So moved by yourself, seconded by Councillor Bentley. Thank you. Good. Go on.
So, well, thank you. So, council has not seen this until now, and I recognize that, but there has been a number of discussions on it, and contained within the report is the existing contract between the City of Thorold and the St. Lawrence Seaway Corporation. That's set to expire this spring. A couple of fundamental issues. One is that the St. Lawrence Seaway is, by my mind, obligated to bring the docks up to date and spend the capital money to bring the docks up to date, regardless of when the contract expires. It is, I think, item 9.1 within the contract. So the federal government, through the St. Lawrence Seaway, has an obligation to bring those docks up to the Ontario disability standards. And there are various numbers. I think the City of Thorold thought 120,000, and the regional staff have gone through and done, I'm sure, the most thorough examination in the report, talking about 600,000. But in any case, the federal government should do that through the St. Lawrence Seaway, not the City of Thorold, not the Niagara region. We all remember that the Niagara's Welland Canal was built to bring power to Niagara Industries, to bring transportation to Niagara Industry, to serve Niagara Industry from one end to the other. Somewhere along the line, this has changed into a mandate to get the boats through as fast and cheap as possible. But to my mind, the federal government still has an obligation, and the Niagara's Welland Canal is still there to serve Niagara. So it needs to be a clear statement from the Niagara region in support of the City of Thorold, but in the broader terms, support of the entire regional economy, that the federal government has an obligation to help the region deal with the downside of having these canal crossings. This is just a small piece of it. The federal government spends huge capital every year making the seaway work for the rest of the country. They spend huge money making it work so that the boats get through fast and cheap. We need to say that we need you to spend some money to make it work for Niagara. This is a small piece. So it is, to my mind, really clear that the region of Niagara needs to state on behalf of Thorold and all 12 of us, the federal government needs to upgrade these docks without question, without condition, regardless of when the contract expires. The rest of the items, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, regarding this, the City of Thorold's contribution, the City of Thorold's skin in the game, there's some indication in the report what that is, but I think there needs to be a little clarification of what Thorold is contributing, has contributed, and would like to continue to contribute under their request. And it was their request that sponsored this, and I guess a request that started back in 2011. So it should not be any surprise to any regional staff that this has been an issue for some time. It may be to some new regional councilors, but this has been an issue for a number of years, and the City of Thorold has been working with regional staff over a number of years to try and get something in place. So I've probably gone on too long, Mr. Chairman. The intent of the motion there is to give the region and the City of Thorold and the federal government time to work something out to be included in the 2018 new agreement. And by that, we need a 2-year extension in some way. So I'm asking by this motion that the staff of the region and the City of Thorold and the Regional Council give clear support to the intention to some way continue the operation of this ferry for another 2 years. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, point of order, and I'm not trying to interrupt. Sorry, sure. Thank you. So here's the point of order, and I'm not the procedural guru that Mayor Augustine is, and that's a compliment. I believe that we have a motion already on a previous floor, which was ratified potentially by council. Commissioner or somebody mentioned that this has been advanced to the budget. With all due respect, if that's on the floor, just in keeping with procedural, and I'm not interrupting Councillor Tims's motion, but we better really abrogate this, what's on the floor. He's asking for a reconsideration, effectively?
Does the motion offend the current?
Well, it absolutely does, because if something's been referred to budget, we're now bypassing it and bringing it back down to committee. I support having this discussion here.
I understand your point. Clerk, you get a...
So the question is there a motion already on the floor that has sent this item to Budget Committee that's been ratified by a council?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand that the matter of the funding for the Port Robinson Ferry will be under consideration this Thursday. Perhaps the best approach, if I may take that extra step, is to refer this motion of Councillor Timms to Budget Review Committee of the whole so that everything comes together at the same time.
Yeah, I believe that we've had the motion passed here to refer this item to Budget Committee, and that's been endorsed by Council. Therefore, Council is directed that funding with regard to the Thorold Ferry, Port Robinson Ferry, be directed to Business Review Committee of the whole. So to entertain this at this point, I believe would be offensive to that Regional Council passed motion.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't recall the specific motion at Council. I just do know that I have heard statements that this matter, the matter of funding for Port Robinson, is coming forward to Budget Review Committee of the whole. And I think that the workaround here is perhaps you should refer this motion for consideration of Budget Review Committee of the whole, and we can transmit it by a memo, and then it's all comes together on Thursday.
Okay. For clarity, though, if this committee passed a motion referring this issue to Committee of the Whole budget, and those minutes were then passed by Council, then entertaining this, wouldn't that be a violation of that motion?
May I offer a suggestion that item 5 is the item that deals with funding, and that be referred to budget, but items 4 and 5 perhaps. Appreciate the help, Mr. Councillor Redekop. Items 4 and 5 refer to funding, Mr. Chairman. that items 1, 2, and 3 are not, do not offend the previous motion to have the funding discussed at budget.
Chair, I'm going to retract my point of order because I think I've heard clearly from the clerk that what we're talking about is the omnibus bill that we're going to try to debate on Thursday night of 30 budget items. Stay tuned. There's nothing that's already on the floor, I've heard from the clerk, that would preclude us from having this discussion, including items 4 and 5, to get them nailed down now in front of the audience who's watching. So I'm retracting my point of order. There is no reconsideration, and I think we're in compliance with procedure.
That's
Mr.
okay.
Chair, perhaps I could raise the point
Yeah,
of order. The point of order being that items 4 and 5 ought properly to be dealt with at the Budget Review Committee on Thursday.
Yeah.
Items 1, 2, and 3, I agree with Councillor Timms. Presuming you've recognized me, Mr. Chair. But items 1, 2, and 3 can be
I
dealt
didn't,
with.
but I will now.
Yes, thank you. Items 1, 2, and 3 can clearly be dealt with here. 4 and 5 ought to be properly dealt with on Thursday. What do you mean, no? They deal with budget.
It's the will of committee.
Okay, we're just still getting, order please, we're still getting some feedback from the clerk. We're just going over past motions that have been approved by council. Right at the beginning. Yeah. So, no, we're finding the reference where it was approved by council. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Order, please.
At the regional council meeting of November 12th, there was a report before council called Council Strategic Priorities Annual Review. One of the recommendations was that new projects under the proposed 2016 implementation plan, as indicated under Appendix 4 in red, be referred to the 2016 budget process for consideration. The Port Robinson Ferry is one of those items that was referred to in red under Appendix 4, so that matter has been referred to Budget Review Committee of the Whole for consideration. So I think it's quite clear that items 4 and 5 have budgetary implications. I can't comment on whether adoption of items 1, 2, and 3 would have some type of budgetary or resource implications, because you're asking that work be done to continue on addressing the interests of the Niagara region. But clearly 4 and 5 do appear to have clear funding implications.
Okay, so Councillor, so 4 and 5, because they're they offend the motion already passed by council, would be out of order. So 1, 2, and 3, if we could leave them on the floor, and 4 and 5 can be referred to council, to budget. 1, 2, and 3 we can discuss now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That sounds appropriate, and I would accept that. How would you like to deal with it procedurally?
Can you
refer it?
On a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, Councillor Chiani, on a point of order.
Thank you very much. I was going to present a friendly amendment on 4 and 5, which would clarify Thorold's, actually, we've heard use the term skin in the game. And now I won't be able to do that because 4 and 5 are offending. So how do I get my point across with regards to my clarification? Do I have to wait the budget process next week on Thursday?
You do?
Chair, excuse, point of order. No, he does, it's, this committee decides, Mayor, with respect, I'll support
Councillor
that.
Petrowski, I haven't recognized you on a point of order. Councillor Luciani has the floor on a point of order. Councillor Luciani, when we get into numbers 1, 2, and 3, I think you can speak to those motions and let your intentions be known, and then at Budget Committee actually make that motion to amend this motion. Because Councillor Timms will move 4 and 5 at Budget Committee, and you can either have him alter it or move to amend at that point in time.
My point is I have a number of things that have to be cleared up, and now that I'm clear that now that I have to do that at the Budget Committee meeting.
Okay.
I cannot do that at this present time.
I'll allow you to speak to it under 1, 2, and 3, because Councillor Timms is keeping those on the floor today. So you can speak to those under 1, 2, and 3, but to actually move the motion you want to move, you would move that on Thursday. But you can speak to it today that you're going to move that on Thursday.
Okay, I'll just speak to it today, and then I'll move it on Thursday.
Correct. Okay. So, I have a motion to refer items 4 and 5 to budget. Moved by Councillor Volpatti, second by Councillor Burrows. Okay, I'm going to put that question. All those in favor?
Recorded motion on the referral.
Sure. Record a vote. All those in favor of moving 4 and 5 to Budget Committee? Vote is open. That's carried. Now, to the remainder of Councillor Timms' motion on numbers 1, 2, and 3. I have a speaker's list. Councillor Timms, do you want to say anything now, or do you want to, I'll put you back at the bottom after I'll go with the remainder of the list?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll accept that. That'd be helpful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Luciani, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify a few things based on costs and Thorold's part of that, their portion of the cost. They basically, if the 66.5K that's budgeted for this or will be budgeted for, you have to Thorold pays $13,000 for the liability, and Thorold also takes on the liability. And also, in-kind services, Thorold is spending $9,000. And one other point I'd like to clarify, our operating hours on the weekends are from 10 o'clock in the morning to 6 at night, and we made that change this past year. And I just wanted to get that point across.
So
okay, that's all I have to say.
Is that a question to staff about those two amounts, the 9,000 and 13,000?
That have not appeared on this report.
So those are over and above the 66,500?
No, 66 minus 13, then you would add the 9K. In the 66,000, there's 13,000 for the liability that Thorold takes on.
Okay.
Okay. Plus, they also spend 9K over and above for in-kind services.
Okay, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. Just try and clarify, keep it simple for the balance of committee. The 66.5 that has been put forward with the budget discussion includes $13,000 currently expended by the City of Thorold for insurance purposes. So that was a part of the ask for the region to take over the operating. What's not included in the 66.5 is $9,000, which Thorold has indicated is internal resources, their own operations folks doing work in the shoulder seasons and throughout the season supporting the operation. So in effect, the real number total annual operating would be 66.5 plus $9,000.
Okay.
Okay, in which we spend approximately 23.
Okay.
So we do have money in there. I just wanted that clarified.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Cheney?
No.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gail Volpatti and Grenier. Gail?
Thank you, Chair. My whole conversation was on points 4 and 5. Now that those have been taken away, before our meeting on Thursday, Chair, will we be getting a report on what Councillor Luciani said about, so we can have everything in front of us before we discuss this on Thursday, about the insurance costs and things like this? Because one of my points was I was wanting to put a dollar cap on it. I won't get into that now because that's conversation for Thursday. But will we have the information that he just gave us and any other information prior to Thursday's meeting? Or are we going to open this up to a full conversation again on Thursday?
The reports that we currently have are pretty extensive. Is there something missing, Commissioner, that?
Thank you, Chair. What I can commit to providing is just a memorandum describing what I just said in terms of
Okay, I just don't want to have anything else come up because every time we get more enlightenment for it, I want to have it all in front of us because these people might have to show up again on Thursday for it again. Sorry, but you know, this isn't going to be dealt with till Thursday, and the money is the issue, numbers 4 and 5. So I support 1 to 3. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Volpatti.
I will stand down. I just wanted to refer those 4 and 5.
Okay, thank you,
Which is done.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Grenier.
Yes, I can. Mine too was a question with respect to how we're going to deal with this on Thursday. And my concern is that this is going to become a very long debate over two competing interests on this for our involvement. The long-term sustainability of the ferry is a separate conversation than keeping it funded for 2016. And I think that maybe if we could have some sort of narrative, as Mr. Commissioner Tripp has suggested, to focus our attention on sort of suggesting that we could provide a guarantee or emergency funding for 2016 and then engage in the long-term negotiation for whether or not we're going to be involved in the long-term viability of the ferry. I think it's a separate conversation afterwards. I think trying to do both of them or solve all these type of intergovernmental negotiations during a budget meeting, I think is not possible. So I hope that we can delineate those two separate requests and have a very clear statement of how we're going to move forward for the 2016 budget.
Okay, thank you for that, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just provide some clarity, and I think I might even have a question to the councillor that put forward the motion. The report very deliberately does not distinguish between the two, because I've been in attendance for one meeting with St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation staff, and prior to that attendance, the City of Thorold has been in numerous ongoing discussions and numerous meetings. There's been every indication that the St. Lawrence Seaway Management, notwithstanding the request here before us, the indication from St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation is that the agreement is the agreement, and there is no extension. I've suggested quite clearly in the report, if council is supportive of a one-year extension, they should reasonably expect to be extended to support this for at least 10 years, which is the term of the agreement that's currently being contemplated between the City of Thorold and St. Lawrence Management Corporation. So I don't think it would be appropriate to put before council the notion that we could keep this alive for 1 or 2 years, because that's not consistent with everything that the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation has indicated to us so far. That doesn't mean it can't happen, it's just not consistent with the position they've taken. The point of clarity I'm seeking myself is through the commentary by Councillor Timms suggested that this be linked to the expiration of the agreement with the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation. And again, I can only speak to one meeting that I was in attendance with, and the question was put to the staff in terms of, is this the position of the Management Corporation or this position of the federal government? And it was clearly indicated to us on a couple of occasions that this is the position of the federal government that they are representing to us. So I'm not sure, even if another service provider was contracted for an agreement past 2018, how that might change the prerogative of the federal government.
So, yeah, so we'll leave that for now.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Grenier still has the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. actually, it wasn't really I was kind of hoping that we could be a little more expeditious with this on Thursday night and spend a little more time trying to figure out a longer-term solution. However, if I can indulge you to maybe through staff, is to have those comments added to the current narrative that's been promised on the cash from the town of Thorold and some of the summary of those meetings, so that our debate can start more from a running start rather than a standing of having everyone else have to get up to speed that wasn't at this particular meeting with the other half of council. To have that in front of them might help us come to a decision a little more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Petrowski.
Thank you, Chair. The members in the audience should know that the Port Robertson Ferry item is item 22 of the largest operating budget agenda I've ever seen, probably in the history of the region, of 30 items. I certainly don't believe we're going to be able to give all those items proper due course with 30 councillors potentially in the room and 30 items. Just do the math. But I will, Mr. Chair, be recommending that we'll, because I disagree with us pushing this, we would have as a committee the opportunity to debate this now out of courtesy for the folks in the audience. And then it wouldn't have to be on the budget. But I will be splitting all 30 items up at budget night, and I'll be moving item 22 to the first item, so that if these folks want to come and hear in person instead of on the internet or wherever, so at least they know that ahead of time. Chair, I do have a question, and maybe Mayor Luciani can answer this. There's nothing in this motion that speaks to the capital, other capital besides the ferry docks. I can't anticipate what some of the other capital requirements are, but one for right off at the get-go is the actual boat. Do we have any idea, Mr. Chair, how long the boat, the pontoon boat is going to last, the motor, everything about it? And is Councillor Timms envisioning, maybe he can answer that now instead of me waiting, because I might have subsequent question, is he anticipating that that's not a responsibility of the region, none of the capital? Because I saw in item 5, which we've deferred, said operating.
Item 4 was specific to the catamaran.
To the what?
To the boat.
So can we get at least an answer tonight what the boat lifetime is?
Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. Page 4 of the report speaks to the vessel. Again, going back to the agreement between the City of Thorold and the St. Lawrence Seaway, that articulates that the replacement of such a vessel would be 50% Thorold and 50% the Seaway. Again, that obligation one could believe to be expiring at the end of the agreement. There is no indication of capital funds in what is being presented on Thursday for the ferry service. Because as per the agreement, it's articulated that others be responsible for that, either the St. Lawrence Seaway or the City of Thorold, a combination thereof. Unfortunately, the documentation that we have is a bit contradictory. Most recently, the City of Thorold, in collaboration with the St. Lawrence Seaway, undertook a condition assessment of the current catamaran, found it to be in good repair with approximately 10 years of life remaining on it, which coincides with the term of an agreement that they are considering between them right now. Fair to say you would expect to have to do some work. That assessment does not include modifications for accessibility, which would be required on the vessel itself as well. The contradictory part is the due diligence study that has been attached as an appendix outright recommended that should the region get into this game, they should replace the ferry and start with a new one. And from a practical perspective, that is probably an appropriate thing to do. It's a question of who would fund such an investment.
Okay, Councillor, so it's a $60,000 cost mentioned in the report, but...
Thank you. We know who funds it at the end of the day, whether it's the Seaway or the region or the City of Thorold. It's the Seaway doesn't grow money on trees on Seaway lands. It's the taxpayer anyway, so the wonderful taxpayer gets to pay for it. I'm a little bit amused by the notion that if the region was getting in the game, it has to be a new vessel right out of the gate. But as far as I'm concerned, I find it quite unnecessary that we're debating these in isolation to the budget item, because everybody in this room knows that every committee, we pass items which inform budgets all through this year, which impact next year. And to drop it here into the budget and refer it and send these folks home without any kind of, they're here to understand, is this ferry going to be survived or not? We're not giving them that answer tonight. We're saying come back on Thursday at best. We might not even get to this. I hope we can move it to the front of the gate. And quite frankly, anybody else who's come forward can say, move my item to the front. We're going to have 10 items up to the front. This is a dog's breakfast of a budget. Shame on us that we even have to do this to these folks.
Thank you. Councillor Timms. And Councillor Timms, just before you speak a final time, this will be obviously referred to City of Thorold, but we have some new MPs in the Niagara region that may have an interest of this. I don't know if you want to include it in the motion that this motion, if passed, gets sent immediately to the new 4 MPs from Niagara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a very helpful suggestion, and I would appreciate that that be added.
Okay.
A couple of points. Wanted to refer to Commissioner Tripp referred to the due diligence study authorized and paid for by the region, I think back in 2011 when the City of Thorold first brought this to us. And I just note recommendation 8.1 that the operations of the Port Robinson Ferry be continued in a fashion similar to the amount of ferry service currently scheduled, and that was the 2011 currently scheduled, which I think addressed some of Councillor Diodati's concerns about the operating hours. Back in 2011, the hours were longer and better served the tourism side of the business. So that due diligence report, I don't remember when it came to Regional Council, but then again, the #1 recommendation was continue to operate. Just the final comments is I have said before, I think it's time for the one team, the entire region, to come behind together and support the City of Thorold in this request to have the Port Robinson Ferry to continue to operate. The ferry is obviously a local benefit to the City of Thorold's neighborhood, the Port Robinson neighborhood. City of Thorold has a secondary plan and has some development that is coming very soon in that neighborhood. And they have taken the liberty to speak to some of those developers. They think that this ferry has value to the residential neighborhood they hope to build in Port Robinson West, I guess it's called. It has value to our tourism industry in Niagara in that it links the tourism air focus of the Niagara Falls and Chippewa with the Welland Canal corridor, which has its own tourism value. And we haven't had a really good link, but without the ferry, that value is decreased significantly. And finally, it has, I think, a value to the region as a whole, because it establishes, I think, the concept that as a regional council, we should be dealing with the owner. I recognize what Mr. Tripp has said about what the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation has said, but they have no contract as of 2018. So what they're talking about a 10-year contract for, I don't understand. There is a 2-year gap between this contract and 2018. The federal government, the owner, the Minister of Transportation, will soon be negotiating and developing a new package. And this council has said very clearly, we want to be at the table to represent the municipal interest, the host municipalities' interest in that new 2018 contract. This is a very clear first statement of that and a very specific item. There's no way the federal government, with all the millions they spend every year on the canal, should be ducking the responsibility to bring these docks up to speed, up to the accessibility code of Ontario. That law, I think, was put in place 5 or 6 years ago, and we're all scrambling to catch up to date. I don't think we should let the federal government out of it simply because they have a contract with Thorold that expires in 2016. So let's deal with the owner. This motion makes that very clear, and I ask council to support it so that we can, as a region as a whole, come together behind one of our team members and get this, preserve this service, this crossing in Port Robinson. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments to this 4-point motion and the reports, I'll call the question. All those on a recorded vote. Okay. Vote is open.
I'm a yes, Chair.
Okay. Okay. You know what that, clerks? Thank you. The motion is carried. Okay, moving to PW 63, 2015. Can I have a mover and a seconder for PW 63? Moved by Councillor Luciani, seconded by Councillor Rigby. It's to receive. Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we're moved to PW 66, and we have a presentation with this. Can I please have John Hemingway from Hatchmont McDonald come to the podium? Mr. Hemingway, if you just wait about 30 seconds till the room clears a little bit. Okay, thank you for your patience, Mr. Hemingway.
Good morning, members of the committee. I'm a project manager with Hatchmont McDonald, and I'm here today to give you an update on the Niagara Escarpment Crossing study. This study was initiated in 2012 to investigate a new and improved crossing of the Niagara Escarpment that could accommodate trucks. It began as a class environmental assessment study to complete phases 3 and 4 of the 1997 Niagara Escarpment study, and to investigate the Park Road and Mountain View Road corridor design alternatives. In June 2013, a Public Information Center number 1 was held, and it confirmed the previous problem statement, that is the problem statement from the 1997 study, that there are significant local and through truck volumes traveling on steep grades through communities or passing incompatible land uses. In March 2014, the study was transitioned into a master plan when it was found that no one solution could address the movement of trucks through the built-up areas below the escarpment. Public Information Center number 2 was held in the fall of 2014 to present short, medium, and long-term solutions to address truck movements across the escarpment. A combination of a new crossing in conjunction with improved traffic management measures and some geometric improvements to the existing crossings was the preferred solution at that time. Geometric improvements, including flattening of steep grades, reducing the number of curved sections, and making shoulder widths more consistent were recommended, as was improving traffic management measures on the existing crossings. A new crossing was identified as a longer-term solution due to its scale, anticipated impact, complexity, and cost. Even with this solution, trucks will continue to travel through the densely populated areas with sensitive land uses with abundant pedestrian and cyclist activity. Mountain Street and Mountain Road have been or are being reconstructed and will incorporate some of the operational and safety improvements identified in the study. Niagara Region has initiated its transportation master plan in the fall of 2015, and this study will be examining truck movement throughout the region. MTO is also re-examining long-term corridor connections in Niagara that may affect travel through the study area. But the reality is, excuse me, sir. But the reality is that trucks traveling through the built-up areas conflict with parking, pedestrians, and cyclists, and are permitted on regional roads. The routes through the built-up areas no longer serve a predominant regional through traffic function. Of the existing crossings, the extension of Bartlett Avenue is the preferred truck route with its connection to the QEW, permitting trucks to avoid the core areas. If the Bartlett Avenue extension and Park Road become a regional truck route, other crossings would become local roads with fewer trucks. For this alternative to be effective, trucks would need to be restricted from using the other existing crossings. With fewer trucks, there would be an opportunity for the core areas to reach their development potential. The strategy to accommodate truck movements across the escarpment that was identified in the 1997 study included a crossing in the west via Centennial Parkway and now Red Hill Valley Parkway, a crossing in the east via Victoria Avenue, and a crossing in the central part of the study area near Park Road and Mountain View Road. Our study is recommending the following: safety and operational improvements to the existing crossings, that Niagara Region and the town of Grimsby enter into discussions to transfer Regional Road 12 to a municipal road from Main Street to Mud Street East, and that Niagara Region and the town of Lincoln discuss the transfer of Regional Road 18 to a municipal road from King Street to Fly Road, and that a class environmental assessment be initiated for the extension of Bartlett Avenue to Mud Street as a regional road corridor, and that Park Road between the Bartlett Avenue connection and Mud Street be uploaded to Niagara Region. And finally, that further investigations into a new escarpment crossing in the Beamsville Vineland area be undertaken. To conclude the study, we will be holding a Public Information Center number 3 to obtain public input concerning the preferred solution. The Niagara Escarpment Transportation Study Report will be finalized and presented to Regional Council, and the Transportation Study Report will be filed for public review and comment, and a notice of study completion will be issued early next year. Project-specific class environmental assessment studies for the preferred solutions could then be initiated. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my overview presentation. I'd be pleased to respond to any questions the committee may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hemingway. Councillors, will open the floor to questions now. I have Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to explore the study you've done on the origin and destination of these trucks. And with the idea, with the interest in, do they all have to come across the escarpment there? Are they all heading for the QEW? And where do they go once they get to the QEW?
In the beginning of when our study commenced in 2012, I think it was the fall, we did an extensive roadside survey of each of, I think there were 5 main crossings, the north-south crossings. Mm-hmm. And we also included, I think, about another 3 of the east-west movements through the study area. And out of that, drivers were stopped, they were asked questions about their travel behavior, why they were there, how frequently they made those trips. What was concluded from that exercise, and it was quite an extensive one, as you can imagine, what was concluded from the responses that we got, that more than half of the truck trips, and these were truck trips picked up on those 5 crossings, the main ones, were local to, had an origin or a destination that was local to one of the 3 municipalities within our study area. In addition to that, those drivers were also asked, since they were picked up on the escarpment crossings, whether there would be a potential for them to change their route if an improved crossing or another crossing was provided. And more than 90% of them said no, they would still be wanting to use those particular routes for various reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I guess what I'm interested in is the 40% that are going, that are not going locally. And what I'm looking at is the crossing the only solution? Is there perhaps a bunch of those trucks would be heading towards Welland and Fort Erie and the border, and perhaps we can use Highway 20 and a north-south down to say Highway 3 or something? Is heading down the escarpment to the QEW the only solution for the 40% that are not local?
And I do apologize, I did not answer the second part of your question about the movement to and from the Queen Elizabeth Way. But what we found when we were looking at the north-south movements, predominantly they were wanting to get the 40% are wanting to get to the Queen Elizabeth Way, and they're split essentially east and west, perhaps with a slight bias to the west, but there's a significant amount that also wants to go to the east. To a lesser extent, there's a desire line wanting to go to the south or to the southeast, but it's not as pronounced as the movement to and from the north.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the presenter in that, I didn't know this was coming up until I saw it in our program, but unless you've owned a trucking company or understand the trucking company, you're not aware of the problems of moving stuff throughout this region. And how things have changed so much with the dump truck that was involved in a major accident in Beamsville, with the Regional Road 24, how it used to be our way for getting, say, if you're coming from Niagara Lake, Niagara Falls, or St. Catharines going to Wainfleet, you're using Regional Road 24 or Highway 20. Highway 20 through Mayor Augustine's developments is out the door shortly because of all the traffic lights. Regional Road 24 because of the speed, because of the monitoring, trucks, and coming down that hill out the quarry, coming from Fly Road down to the hill. That's too slow for those trucks coming down there. I get it why. So it's a major problem. I'm just coming up with problems now. I don't have a solution. But I've interviewed drivers before and tried to tell them which way to go. The roads that suffer are the FOSS roads of this world. These side roads that other trucks are taking, which the people now are infuriated because they see the dump trucks going back and forth there. So we have to do something to have a road for the trucks, north-south, east-west, and we don't have it right now. I mean, I can give you examples from my last business. They go to Netherby Road, they go to Forks Road, they go to different spots. But it's hurting the trucking industry, and it's hurting it so bad that truckers now are looking at where their headquarters are. You don't want to be up in the Fly Road area there, coming down Regional Road 24, because it's so slow coming through there. You have to look at different locations if you have the ability and the money to do it. So it's a real problem if you don't understand it. I'm saying to this council, the crossroads of this region. Red Hill Expressway solved it for Hamilton in somewhat for the truckers to get around that way. We don't have a solution. Wainfleet, Port Colborne, even Welland are out there. If you can't use 406, you're dead in the water. And that because it's so slow for you to get there and you're looking for alternative ways and that. So I support what you're doing. I don't know how you solve it because anything you do will be built up like Regional Road 24 eventually went to. That was a main thing for trucks there 30 years ago. Now it's 40 kilometers, I think, in some there, and I get it why. And with that dump truck that killed some people in Beamsville 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I get it why they don't want it there. But you gotta just grab some dump trucks and talk to them. And you'll see how much a problem it is for us to move stuff in our region with trucks. and that. So I'm just saying, anybody that dismisses this, that this isn't a problem, it is a problem for somebody. I'm not moving a headquarters to Port Colborne unless I can get it by the 406, and the 406-58 is garbage to get there, especially if you have to come over to the 140 and then cut back. You're trying to save time. Time is money. And to get to Port Colborne, I'm sorry, Mayor Maloney, for saying it this way, it's a tough one to get to Port Colborne there. We got to make it simpler. And Wainfleet, same way. Regional Road 24 kills you the first section, then it's great. And that. So the trucking industry supports what you're doing. I'd like to hear your solutions to this because I don't have them.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, but I think Mr. Gale is echoing the comments that we've received over the 2.5 years that we've been working on the study. And we've had quite an extensive public consultation program. We've had stakeholder working groups, various interest groups. We've had discussions with some of the aggregate producers on the top of the escarpment, and some of them do take there's no way around it. They take a time penalty of going through the urban areas. They don't like going through the urban areas. They recognize that there are risks. And in some cases, those time penalties are quite significant. So I think in the interest of the economy and in the interest of the livability of some of the corridors that we're talking about, a solution has to be found. And this is what we're struggling with. But I think what we've identified through this long process is that of the options that are available, that the Bartlett extension up the escarpment is the best. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's the best that we have out of the suite.
And I'll come back at you. The B trains, the semi-trailers are taking a killing trying to get to, and I come back to Port Colborne. If you wanted to go to the docks in Port Colborne and that from St. Catharines, it's a tough call once you get down the 406. We have not made it easy for our trucks, and I blame that on the MTO a lot. But any way I can be involved in this, I'd appreciate it down the way because I've got a lot of insight into this. But it is a problem that we have to solve, or else I'm not opening a business in the Welland area unless I can use the 406. 406 is it. Other than that, it's garbage. Thank you.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to presenter. I'm certainly looking forward to this moving forward. A few years ago, former Mayor Hodson and myself said, we don't really care where the access goes. All of them right now are not safe. They go right through my community. We've had people killed. They go through now Mayor Easton's community, but former Mayor Hodson's. They are not appropriate for truck traffic. But one of the options that I think needs to be looked at, and I've presented that to our former MPP, Brad Clark, when he was the Minister of Transportation, was looking at a tunnel through the escarpment, because trying to get an approval for a new crossing in the escarpment, I think is going to be next to impossible. And you're still going to be dealing with the existing roadways, and that just because there's a connection to the QE, unless you look at reducing the grade. We've got quarries at both ends of the region and bordering on Hamilton. They're halfway through the escarpment now. So look at the least populated area and look at a tunnel. You know, Big Becky's not working in Niagara Falls now, so, you know, maybe that one's available, but if you're halfway through it already, pick the least obtrusive area anywhere in that study area and keep them out of downtown Beamsville, Vineland, downtown Grimsby. People want to grow there. People want to live there, and our truck drivers don't want to go through there. So, you know, I think, I'm not on the Escarpment Commission, but I think the way that they've been going over the last number of years, you're not going to get a new crossing. It took 50 years to get to Red Hill. You know, and the federal government fought that one. So I'm glad that these recommendations are coming forward in my lifetime, because there's certainly a lot of safety issues that could at least be addressed in the short term. And banning trucks is one thing that we've asked. Increased enforcement is another thing, and that appears to work, but only when you're doing the enforcement. They'll find the path of least resistance down the mountain. So I look forward to this going forward again, and hopefully a solution is found long-term, and it stays out of the middle of municipalities.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Bentley, we did examine a tunnel. The location that we picked was the extension of Casablanca going up. We looked at, I think it was a 4-lane. We looked at a 3-lane or a 4-lane, and it was about a 2 kilometer from portal to portal to see daylight. And the costs were in very high. They were in a range of about 130 up to over $200 million to do that. But we've also looked at the cost to build a new crossing somewhere in the east part of the study area. And there are significant challenges there in terms of the numbers of structures, a new interchange, that it puts it on a sort of a comparable footing. So yes, we have looked at that initially. We had a full discussion at the public level and with our stakeholders. And then that's what we came back and started looking at the other solution, which was that managing the traffic, thinking could some of the movements be restricted? I won't say banned, but just controlled in a better fashion. But at the time, the regional policy was that regional roads are to accommodate trucks. That underlying premise drove a lot of the alternatives that were evaluated, or how the alternatives were evaluated in our study. What's come to light now is an alternative of looking at some of those existing crossings and seeing that the regional through traffic movement function, it's not as predominant, or it's not its primary function, particularly in the urban areas. It's serving more of a land access or a collector type of a function. So even in the long term, relying on those roadways for moving your commercial vehicles is not a sustainable option either.
No, I agree with that. They're using roads like Ridge Road to go east-west, and you get anywhere near Mountain Road in Grimsby and try to get to 30 Road or get into Mountain in Beamsville, unless you're using Mud Street, Fly Road, you can't get through there directly. But looking at Casablanca area, you've got Vinemount Quarry that's out towards 50 Road, so that, having an angle out that way might even work. But that's certainly the steepest part of the escarpment too. And okay, I'll look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. And a per meter cost is cheaper than a bridge we've just built, but for the Bob Bentley Memorial Tunnel. Councillor Buchowski.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on that $130 million price tag for the tunnel. With respect, that seems like a very low price. It's almost, reminds me, and Councillor Bentley brought up Big Becky, that's Dalton McGuinty math. I think the first price tag on the price tag was about $500 million. It was $2 billion. Do you really have firm numbers that would put, I would say build it tomorrow if you have a $130 million price tag?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. No, we do not have firm numbers. I'll be the first to admit that. We're doing a planning level study, essentially a master plan at this point. And at that, we're using the information that's readily available to us. And our company is involved with building the twin tunnels in Eglinton Avenue, a lot of the major transit projects in Toronto. We're well aware of the cost.
Right.
But when we're working on those projects, we have detailed geotechnical information that's available. We know what's happening underground to be able to give some confidence. We're trying to, at this point, we were trying to do a screening of the various alternatives to sort of put them in different categories of feasibility only. And so they're only to be viewed at a screening level. Whatever happens in the master plan, whatever recommendation goes forward, it would be to conduct further more detailed environmental assessment to quantify these risks, financial risks or uncertainties, as well as impacts and ways to possibly mitigate some of those impacts.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. So it's probably a little bit more east than what would service the commercial traffic requirements. And after all, I mean, it's the whole reason, I think one of the main sources of the impetus for this is obviously the truck traffic, which is driven by their commercial interests. But it seems to me that Regional Road 24, Victoria Avenue, except for its location, provides an obvious faster track into the southern tier. Even if you look at lowest impact in terms of neighbors who lives on there, And I'm sure nobody likes nobody likes expropriation, nobody likes to have to move, nobody likes extra traffic, but what's the downside? Is location a big negative with Victoria Avenue? Because to me, it would be it's got the geography to force a minimum 4-lane highway through. Is it too close to the 406?
Firstly, historically, through you, Mr. Chairman, historically, Victoria Avenue has provided that 4-lane roadway platform and has been relied upon by the area businesses and the communities in that area as a lifeline for their daily transportation needs. The main issues with Victoria Avenue specifically are the grades coming down from just south of King Street, which are quite steep, and it's actually a roller coaster, sort of an alignment. So it's deceptive in some degree, to some extent, but it's also quite long. So the risk of something happening if your truck isn't mechanically A1 may be higher. Like most of the other major crossings, and I'm speaking now of Mountain Street, Mountain Road, there's a community usually at the bottom, just either at King Street or south. So that isn't going to go away. So at one point, I mean, that roadway could accommodate 4 lanes. When I was with another company about 12, 13 years ago, we went through an extensive street improvement program for Victoria Avenue through the area, specifically the area from John Street up to King Street. And we were looking at taking the 4 lanes and doing a road diet and taking it down to the 3 lanes. And again, you can see there are a number of conflicting interests there in terms of trying to balance. There are on-street parking, there's school crossings, there's seniors' homes, all within a very confined area. So, but Victoria Avenue actually takes, half of the truck traffic that's going over the escarpment currently. And in fact, back when the original 1997 study was done, it was up, I think, higher than 2/3 of the truck traffic because of the work that was going on the Queen Elizabeth at the time. So part of the region, that road has always played an important role, an important commercial spine in the regional road network, and we anticipate that will continue to be. When you look in the long term, it's conceivable that as that whole area develops, that it would be no different than, say, Mountain Street in Grimsby or Mountain Road in Beamsville. I'm not suggesting it is today, but there may be a reason why you would want to not have trucks moving down Victoria Avenue, which would say then they either have to go onto a 400 series highway, so it's either 406 or a new 400 series highway somewhere else. And that's part of some of the options that the MTO are still currently looking at, and I know the region are looking at as part of their TMP, the overall connections and the overall truck movements, not just in our rather limited study area, but throughout the region.
Okay, thank you. So through you, Chair, how many years or decades are we away from seeing a full, if realistically, a 4 series highway moving from Queen Elizabeth somewhere south between 406 and the Red Hill?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can only offer an opinion. I'm not part of the teams that are looking at that on behalf of the province. But what we do know is that when we started the project, we were in communication with the MTO, and at that particular time, and I'm going back a number of years, that they felt that the needs, at least to the 2031 horizon, could be accommodated through additional widenings to the Queen Elizabeth Way without providing an additional 400 series. Now, I know the ministry is now reviewing that and extending the time frame to perhaps 2041 or 2051. And that work is ongoing, and that we were hoping that as our project was ongoing, that would have come to a head sooner, but it hasn't. So from the region's perspective, we've had to proceed on the basis of trying to come up with an acceptable regional solution.
Okay, thanks. So, Chair, I'd like you to confirm what I think I've heard reading this, like, and there's, through you, Chair, there's items that are in bold. That's your bolding, or is that staff bolding after the fact?
I believe that's staff bolding after the fact.
Can I get confirmation from that, Chair?
You mean in terms of the
Well, for example,
executive summary?
on page E1, on the fourth paragraph down, it says the study concluded that if a new or improved crossing suitable for trucks was provided, there would be significant number of trucks using existing crossings. That's in bold. So is that Hatch McDonald bolding it, or is that staff bolding it?
I believe that's staff holding that.
In the report, page E1 of the report.
Oh, E1?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were saying 81.
E1. Is that the Hatch McDonald report?
That would be our, yes, that would be our,
And you're bolding it?
yes.
So just for peace of mind or not, it seems to me that regardless, we've heard there's no imminent solution. Trucks are going to find the path of least resistance. You spoke to Victoria Avenue, which you said is potentially hazardous because of its grade. It gets worse in my mind as you go more west in terms of grade. We're going to continue in Niagara to operate under a fairly potentially hazardous truck routing environment for years going forward still, because you can't shut them all down. And to me, Victoria Avenue is probably the least dangerous of all of them. But in your mind, as the professional who we paid big dollars to put this report together, thank you very much. We will continue to operate some north-south routes that trucks will use, which in your estimation are not the safest they could be in their current capacity.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that was the conclusion of our study. We looked at all of the crossings, I think from Wolverton over to Victoria Avenue. We found that all of them had significant safety issues. We identified a program for the region, both operational and safety improvements. The region has been systematically going through those now, several of those roadways are municipal roadways, they're not regional roadways. So of the three currently the regional roadways, so two of them, Mountain Road, Mountain Street, have been or are going through a reconstruction, and the region has been looking at our recommendation suggestions for safety improvement, operating improvements, and they've been incorporating those into those projects as it's feasible to do so. Some of the improvements have higher budget effects, and would take a longer time frame to implement. And would require further study because they may require acquisition of property or more significant impacts.
Okay, my last question, Chair, which I'll follow with a concluding comment, and I'm sorry if it's in here or you spoke to this already, and I'm just guesstimating as a layperson traveling these areas along the top of the escarpment, whether I'm beating Quebec or QE traffic or not, most of the truck traffic that you looked at seems to me, and I would say over 75–80% is A to B within Niagara region traffic. In other words, they're going from somewhere in Niagara to somewhere in Niagara. We're not looking at people in Fort Erie making shortcuts to get out to Toronto with big semi-trailers or whatever. It seems to me most of the commercial traffic is A to B within Niagara. Do you have a percentage? Did you look at that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we looked at the percentage of vehicles or trucks that had an origin or destination within West Lincoln, Lincoln, or Grimsby was 53%. The other 47%, what we categorize as external trips, so they had an origin or destination outside of that area. So it could be Port Colborne, Fort Erie, could be Wainfleet, could be any of the communities around the area, but we intercepted them on. Although it's not just a mail-in survey, these are surveys that are done of trucks that are physically intercepted on 5 of those crossings. So those are the ones that were of most interest to us because we wanted to know why are they there.
Right.
And the telling statistic was even if they'd be very they're changing their travel pattern would be very inelastic. In other words, they're there for you know, whether it's the shortest route or the most comfortable for them, or maybe it's dictated by their company policy. There could be a number of factors that we had identified through our study.
Okay, so, sorry, part B to that, my Colombo question. So you actually physically, when a truck stopped at a stop sign or at a light, one of your people or a subcontractor asked that driver, where are you from, where are you going?
We had to set up formal survey stations. So they had to be, because of the nature of the rigs we were dealing with, the weights and the sizes and the velocities of them.
Right.
We had to design stations that those rigs could be flagged to pull off the facility safely, so that our personnel and our subcontract personnel could interview the drivers. The interviews were relatively short, as you can imagine, and then the truckers were on their way. But it wouldn't be possible, given sort of the terrain on some of the crossings, to just pull, and it wouldn't be in the public interest just to pull them off at a stoplight or a stop sign at a crossroads. It had to be done in a safe manner, and at least in an area where not only the truck driver was safe, but the personnel that were doing the surveys were safe as well.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'm going to exhaust my last comment with a question instead, because I wrote it down. It came fairly late in probably your study, but the current provincial government is even looking at it. Have you given, or will you be giving any regard to tolling? And would tolling be effective, or would trucks just find, like they do on the 407, another route? Is tolling an option in your study going for, in anything you're doing for us going forward, or have you commented on tolling?
No, we have not commented on tolling. We were given a very clear terms of reference at the start of the study and what we were to be looking at. But anecdotally, tolling, although it does make sense, for everything that you do, and I can even echo this for some of the improvements or some of the alternatives that we were looking at in our study area. Very often when you have the type of characteristics with the travel patterns that we have for the trucks at least in these three municipalities, that when you try to restrict them or do something to them in one area, you kind of push them to go to another area and you create another problem. So,
the Newton School of Economics, every economic reaction has an equal and opposite reaction.
System.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Petrowski touched on the Mid-Peninsula proposed highway of some future date. In your look at, and I'm looking at page E7, and the shaded area of the possible somewhere around here location, was any consideration given to that plan at all when you were looking at it? That would.
What you see on that page E7, that figure ES2, the grade area,
yeah.
Considerable effort went in to identifying within our study boundaries, which essentially were the western regional boundary, over to, well, let's just call it Victoria Avenue, or the area of Victoria Avenue. Within that area, and from Region Road 20 up to the lake, within that area, we went through a process that looked at all of the regional data in terms of whether it's natural environment, social environment, physical infrastructure, utilities, that the region could provide us. We came up with a constraint map and an opportunity map to see where, if you did try to put a new crossing somewhere, because recognizing that each one of the existing ones has issues with them, or a community that it passes through. The result of that exercise is pretty much what you see in this area. The opportunities were in the eastern side, but I mean, intuitively, that's where the height of the escarpment is decreasing at that point, and it becomes less challenging to get a roadway that will meet a truck standard, an acceptable truck standard. And the reason why it's grade and it's as big as it is, it's not to say that it's overly important. It's just that there's an area, we believe there's an area there somewhere that it would be feasible to find a corridor. Recognizing that there are still significant land use planning issues, there are physical constraints you'd still have to deal with.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just two other items. In that, I think you've touched on it, is that things like the Escarpment Commission and the Green Plan and all of those impediments to doing anything through that area, that was also part of your discussion and consideration. Would that be correct in that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, but the Escarpment Commission was one of the partners in our study. We formed what's known as a technical agency committee or review committee. They were part of that. When the decision, when I spoke earlier about having I think it was March 2014, where the study sort of transitioned from a municipal class environmental assessment into a master plan. At that particular point, presentations were made by the region and our company as well directly to the Escarpment Commission. And explaining our interpretation of what some of the feasible options were, recognizing that they're quite restrictive requirements in terms of either fixing an existing crossing or trying to have an approval for a new crossing. So they were directly involved in the study, and they are to this day.
Thank you. And my last question, if, or should I say when, a new crossing is actually put in place, will part of what you're looking at be sort of land use surrounding that facility, that new road, if it is built? It seems to me that when we build a road, then that's where population kind of arrives at and wants to be right next to. And therefore you have, in the future, another problem with too much population around that hill going down. And is that something you'd be looking at as well? I'm not sure if you carry that kind of scope, but
we do consider that, but at a master plan level, it's embodied in the evaluation criteria and some of the measures that we do use. Okay. But we consider it both ways. We consider it not only as an opportunity, because when you're improving mobility or you're improving land access, it opens up a host of potentials. But we also look at it from the sense of what we call the in-between infrastructure. In other words, when you usually put something in, you're displacing something. So there's a cost associated. So we look at it from both the benefit from what we're doing and the cost effect. But at this point, it's at a high level because it's at a master plan.
So if carried forward, you might be in position to make recommendations on things such as land use.
Not directly. All we would identify was whether we felt there was an opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner would like to handle part of that question, Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, because it's a bit of I think I can understand where the question's going. It's an extension of sort of the area of responsibility of the presenter. Absolutely, land use would be a consideration in that. You touched on no small feat, and my word, it's highly speculative. My word is if, not when. Some controlled access corridor would be pushed up the escarpment, some net new access. If that is to happen in the future, will be derivative of stuff that's happening with the east-west corridor in the south, the provincial mandate to look at transportation across the whole Golden Horseshoe, and that's what's spoken to in the presentation. Way out there, and I'm going to be very speculative to say that's 50 years away. We need to deal with the current situation right now.
I don't think I'll worry.
Councillor Hodgson.
Excuse me. Yeah, and I want to thank you for the presentation. I do want to, as Mayor Bentley has pointed out, just want to thank the staff for at least continuing to look at this. And I think it's important that we understand that this is about managing. I think it's about managing something of a risky business, and there is no one is under any illusion that there's a quick fix or an easy solution. Victoria Avenue, and I think it's important. Certainly, our town, two very important industries, agriculture and aggregates. We're under no illusions that Victoria Avenue will not be an important connection It's going to be there, and it's there for the long term. The fate for Vineland, and certainly there's a lot of traffic calming features that the region has put in, which have really added to the management of the risk, and so that's certainly important. The Victoria Avenue decision was made back in the 60s when MTO actually offered to put the intersection either at Martin Road or Cherry Avenue, which is immediately to the west. And back in the 60s, the great fear, of course, was if you were going to be bypassed, your commercial core would die. This is what, you know, and that's a real 60s thing. And that's what that decision then was made, to put the grade separation at the CN rail and the interchange on the QEW. And so, you know, those were local, and actually that was driven by local decision makers. So so we live with that in our town. We know that that's a decision that has a long history to it. Bartlett and Park has been identified, and it's interesting because that actually, that solution is there too. There was a grade separation built for that purpose, and there's an interchange built for that longer term purpose. So I guess what I really would like to ask, just to make sure that we reinforce, is the notion of transferring Mountain Road and Mountain Street, and quite simply the core of Beamsville and the core of Grimsby, the business core, central business districts, those are really poor geometrics in terms of truck crossings, right?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I was involved in, I think in the town of Lincoln in 1991, did a transportation planning review. The issue obviously then was the jog in Ontario Street, King and Mountain. And since that time, and I'm admitting I've been around the block a few times, wearing different hats, but the issue has not gone away. There are significant geometric issues. There are also issues related to parking, just sidewalks and businesses wanting to have sort of more walkable, livable space as opposed to road space, and very little setback in terms of the way the area has developed. You'll find that not only in downtown Beamsville, but you find it in areas in downtown Grimsby, and you'll also see it in Vineland and several of the communities along the old Highway 8.
So moving forward, the one of the steps that could be taken to try to at least limit the amount of truck traffic would be this transfer to the local, from a regional road, taking away that the policy that means all regional roads need to be designed for moving trucks from one urban center to another. That's why that one is being rolled out as a solution, potential solution?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's the significant change that's occurred since, I think, when we met with the public in 2014 and now. That initially, the regional roads were to be regional roads and were to accommodate trucks. The thinking now is that there may be an opportunity to, and getting to your point, that doesn't offer a long-term or sustainable solution for truck movement across the escarpment, abstracting a little bit from what the province does, because it may be decades before something is ever realized, and we feel, I think everybody feels, that there's a reasonably significant safety issue that shows up periodically, but people live it every day, and just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it isn't going to happen tomorrow.
No, and that's right, and I know our new mayor of Lincoln is concerned that, you know, we do take the weight of the responsibility seriously, that we don't want something tragic to occur on our watch if we're not at least looking at traffic management interventions. And Mayor Bentley mentioned about enforcement, and it does work when it's in place, and we certainly hope that part of the solution will also be perhaps with the Victoria Avenue crossing, a lay-by that is safe for MTO to do their enforcement, because that's one of the areas and one of the issues that's been raised whenever MTO is pressed to put in more of a kind of a permanent enforcement. They're lacking a facility to have trucks safely escorted off the roadway, to be either inspected or weighed or whatever. And so I think that's one of the pieces you maybe want to look at too, is about that enforcement issue, because I think we all recognize there's no magic bullet here. Also, some of the urgency around it is made. I think when Mayor Bentley and I asked to have the EA sort of reconvened or recommenced, was over the fact that clearly the Mid-Penn as a transportation corridor was put so far into the future through provincial decisions, and then, not to make things even worse, the mid section of the QEW was sort of put even further into the future for improvements. So quite simply, if there's an accident on the QEW, the traffic has nowhere to go except through a whole bunch of poorly prepared roadways. And so that's some of the urgency really came from that, and those steps that are out of our control. But I certainly hope that we'll keep looking at coming up with a plan to continually manage, add to those interim steps so that we can make our community safer. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Hemingway, for your presentation. Appreciate you. Can I get a mover and seconder for PW 66 and C41? Councillor Rigby to both, Councillor Bentley. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Redicott.
Mr. Chair, you're on PWC C41?
We're in PWC 66 and 41, yeah.
Just exactly how the regional staff handles this, but referring to C41, when the region transfers roads to the municipalities, I understand that there's a policy that the roads are, generally speaking, put into a good condition and there aren't immediate maintenance or repair issues to be dealt with. However, the transfer reduces the responsibility of the region for a portion of their existing road network prior to the transfer, and increases the burden on the local municipality for that road in the long term. That would be all well and good if municipalities were billed on a municipality by municipality basis, just broken down into public works roads. But that doesn't happen. It's a global budget that the region levies across the region. And I notice that in some municipalities there is discussion about transferring roads from the municipality to the region, which means that the region is taking on a greater responsibility in those municipalities and lessening the burden on the municipalities. So how conceptually and philosophically, and I suppose more importantly practically, does that get all evened out in the long run?
Thank you, Chair. I'd love to say yes. That is the general theory of it. There's puts and takes in both directions. Having been at two of the local jurisdictions, there is either a relief of operating costs or an absorption of operating costs. Overall, I think it does balance out, and we've intentionally tried not to make this too complicated in terms of the accounting for it. Because overall, there's actually an upload of service, which is the street lighting, which the region has been doing incrementally over the years. Many of the road facilities are being downloaded to local jurisdictions, which is exactly the transfer of responsibility that you described. Overall across the region, and we're doing this incrementally, we're uploading the maintenance of traffic, of illumination across the region in all local municipalities. So I couldn't say to the committee that it works out all square in every local municipality, but overall it does balance out. And that was the philosophy put forward to the committee of the day in 2008 or 2009, I believe.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I might, I suppose yes was as good an answer, because I don't necessarily follow how that all works out. But maybe I could ask a question then about the street lighting, because I wasn't aware that that was an initiative. How's that going to work then for municipalities that are going into debt in order to change over from existing lighting to LED lighting? If the region were to take that over, what's that mean to the municipality?
Commissioner.
Through Mr. Chair, again, this is a work in progress, so I don't have a definitive answer for Councillor Redekop. In fact, I suggest it might even vary between municipalities because each municipality has taken a slightly different approach. To date, the region has assumed responsibility on roads that we reconstruct. We would install new infrastructure and illumination with that and assume that responsibility going forward. We're just now embarking on actually the assumption of existing plant, recognizing that many jurisdictions have now upgraded their illumination with LED lighting. I guess the conversation or the scenario for each of the local jurisdictions based on how much was, what the capital investment was and how much of that has already been recouped. I'll use the example of the City of Welland, who was far ahead of the curve with this retrofit, is actually, I understand, recouped the cost of that capital investment already. So it's really just a straight out transfer. Long answer and not a definitive answer. We're just starting on those conversations right now with local jurisdictions.
So can I just ask one more question, Mr. Chair, and that would be, if the region has theoretically or hypothetically no regional roads within a municipality, what would the region's interest be in being responsible for the roadside lighting?
Through Mr. Chair, in theory, none, but that is not the case. There's regional road infrastructure in every municipality.
I suppose it's a matter of degree. Some municipalities have fairly small percentages of regional roads within their inventory. Others have significant amounts of regional roads, and I suppose that would all be a balancing, but this perhaps is a topic for discussion on another day.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Councillor Augustine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank staff for bringing this report forward. I was very impressed that it is timely in terms of it's up to date. So it isn't something that obviously sits on a shelf somewhere and, oh yeah, we better look at that. No, you keep it up to date. You're actively working on it, rationalizing, looking at different, based on traffic and the principles that are in Appendix 3. So I appreciate it. It's really is a complete report, putting in the mapping. So I see there in Appendix 1, Mr. Chair, that there are some, regional staff are actively working with area municipalities on this. Maybe it's something that we should look at annually, Mr. Chair, because they continue to work on this. And Mayor Redekop makes a good point that it does have, eventually it has budget implications one way or the other, and that's important for councils to know. So just want to thank staff. It's a very, very complete report, and I know I looked at it sort of for my own municipality, but I want to look at it for other municipalities across the region, get a flavor for these as we move along and get a better understanding of that give and take on local versus regional. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grenier.
Thank you, and I'm also glad that the report has come forward so quickly after the request. And to be totally honest, I'm happy with what I saw with respect to the road segments and regional assets in Welland being on the report. I had asked Commissioner Tripp to speak to those, as I was involved with almost all of those when I was filling in for the mayor of Welland almost 4 years ago. We had started that, and culturally his predecessor was not inclined to actually go much further with those discussions. So I'm glad that they're happening there. My request, though, is this, that when these will have budget implications, and how best can we be involved from this committee and as individual councillors in making sure that we can move that through the process and be involved in how that would appear either budget review or the Public Works Committee moving forward.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. And again, back to the comments from Councillor Redekop, just in my recollection of what has happened over the years, I think almost every case has been a unique solution to a unique environment or circumstance. And I'll give you the most recent example, which was the upload of St. David's Road from the city of Thorold and the city of St. Catharines to the region of Niagara. And with that came just an underlying philosophy of what funds would come with that to basically support any environmental assessment going forward. That was an interesting example. It's very timely. It just happened. In terms of how this committee is engaged, as well as the local jurisdiction, all of that was done through reports to regional committee and council and through reports at the local jurisdiction, both St. Catharines and the city of Thorold. So I'd suggest to the committee that everybody was eyes wide open in terms of what was being done and the financial consequences of that.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I may have misspoke. I'm actually just asking that to be tipped off, to be helpful in making sure it's moved. It wasn't an indictment on the process going forward. I'm happy with what's there. I just want to make sure that Councillor Marshall and I can be engaged with Mayor Campion on helping move those discussions beyond the staff-to-staff current that's going on in Welland, and I hope that other councillors share the same idea. Now, if I can, to the previous two reports, I'm hoping that the master plan, the transportation master plan, can give some consideration to dedicated truck routes, considering the conversation we had here and how best that we could perhaps ask the lower municipalities and the NRP and the Ministry of Transportation on enforcement of such a thing. So I think that when we have that and sort of distill that down, I think that we might be ready politically to go down that road on more stringent restrictions on truck traffic and try to invest capital on making thoroughfares more friendly to trucks and steer them, towards using those particular road segments. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call a question on receiving those two reports. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any other business? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned till January 5th, 2016.